Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and I have to apologize for the super long delay. The last recording we did was December 24th. So the reason for the delay is because we've been trying to put Design Cinema together as a more solid product to create more content for you guys. Maybe you guys have already noticed the new bumper and the transitions, and these are our efforts to make this brand much better, to hopefully create a lot more episodes this year. We're going to try to get into other kind of themes going. So there's a lot of stuff planned, and we've been working for the past 3 months to put all that stuff together. So hopefully this delay will no longer be reproduced, and then we'll be creating a lot more content this going forward this year. The other reason why we've been so delayed is because we are moving our school for a physical location. We're going to somewhere new in about 2 weeks. So as part of that, actually, this recording might get kind of messy in terms of sound because part of my office door is completely missing. It has been removed by the construction guys and put to the new office. So you guys might hear some background noise like my staff talking or walking by or people come in and out. So that's something that I cannot do anything about. And lastly, I just came back from GDC. I was out there for about 2 weeks doing the GDC San Francisco, and in fact that's what this episode is going to be about. And we are in episode 79, Creating Worlds. So let's jump start into this show. All right, so Creating Worlds, GDC 2015. For those who are there, I thank you so much for listening in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And for those who missed GDC, my talk over there, this hopefully will recreate the entire session. Okay, so this talk is aimed at students and also I think maybe junior designers. I think for pros, you guys got everything down anyways. You guys don't need to hear this kind of stuff. But it's mostly for students entering into the design industry. And I think one of the hardest things facing young designer is, what do I draw? It's so stressful because one, you're balancing your renderings and your penciling and all your painting skills, and then at the end of the day you have to create something very unique, and that's so challenging. And these are two things that are hard for young students to balance. So hopefully what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a series of slides, about 8 of them, that's going to go through various ways to approach design thinking. Okay, but before we get that, let's preempt the entire design thing with some background of what is the goal of design, what are we trying to achieve. Okay, so let's go to the first slide. By the way, this entire episode is going to be a bunch of slideshows, so I'm not going to be painting anything, so mostly it's going to be audio driven. Hopefully that won't bore you guys too much, and after we come back, maybe episode 80, we'll go back to something like drawing or painting. Okay, so let's go to the first slide. Boink. All right, so first let's talk about the pre-production pipeline. What I've done here is chart out the typical production schedule of a concept artist. So what happens is, in the usual case, you get the design spec from a client. For example, design us a new RPG landscape thingamajig, right? A bunch of levels. What is that going to be? So once we get that design spec, it's our job now to deliver that solution. Now, in the case of most students, because they're still learning how to draw and paint, they tend to spend a majority of the time, in this case almost 90% of the time, painting and drawing, and spend only 10% of the time actually thinking about what they're actually designing. So as an instructor, when we see the final result, our critique will be, man, you painted this really nice, you drew this really nice, but the design is kind of boring, or there's no design at all. You just drew something. So, and this is also true when you're working in the industry. They give you so little time. For example, you're a freelancer, they'll tell you, hey, we need a new RPG level. It's Monday right now. We need it by Friday morning, right? And they want 5 paintings. That is such a tight timeline that you're almost forced to spend very little time design and yet spend the rest of the time doing all this beautiful art. Because for the clients, they still want something pretty. They still want a nice painting. They still want beautiful drawings. But they also want you to deliver a fantastic design solution. And these two things are at odds with each other. Because in the ideal world, down here, once you get the design spec from the clients, in the ideal world, you'll be like, okay, I need 2-3 days just to think. I need to go research some books, go to the library, or go to the internet, sketch, draw, brainstorm with friends, and just come up with a solution. Because ultimately, that's what the client's paying for anyways, right? They want you to design solution. And therefore, in the ideal world, you should be giving plenty of time to think this stuff out. And once you have it down, the design that is, then you go and spend maybe 30% of that entire schedule drawing and painting it out, right? And this, therefore, the design part takes high priority. However, this is usually not the case because most productions don't give you the luxury of time Okay, maybe when you're working in-house somewhere and your studio is really big and you guys can afford that type of time schedule, then maybe. But for freelancers like myself, you never really get that chance. It's Monday meeting and it's due Friday and we want a ton of work. So what I'm going to try to cover is help you guys jumpstart that design thinking process. Let's try to get some really cool ideas out in such a short amount of time, so you still have the luxury of making nice drawings, nice paintings, but make your design thinking just as good as your rendering skills. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let me take a sip of coffee. Man, it's been a long time since I recorded an episode. It's quite strange. I think, 3 months, man. Let's not do that again. Okay, next slide. Design goals. All right, so what are we trying to do? As designers, we have a goal to achieve, right? And this design goal is not about your art. It's about finding the solution. So here I've made a little chart displaying where the goal eventually ends up. So on the extreme left, we have too crazy of a design, which is different to be different, but not marketable. So what does that mean? That just means that, okay, I'm gonna design something different because no one else around me is doing it. But is it gonna sell? I don't know, big question mark. For example, let's do Transformers, but instead of having machine parts transform, let's make them all bubblegum, right? That's the example I've given before. They're made out of sticky bubblegum and they transform into a car made out of bubblegum, and when they wanna hide, they become all flat and get stuck on the ground and people step on them and stuff. Okay, is that different? Of course it is. It's very different. No one's going to come up with that. But is it marketable, to your mass audience? And that's questionable. In my opinion, probably not. I think the version with metal and parts and gears and car parts, that's a little bit more marketable, even though the bubblegum stuff is different. So that's on the too crazy side. Now, there are some games that go into this realm, but we have to discuss those on an individual basis. But in terms of grand scale of design, too crazy is quite rare. Okay, then you have the other side, the other spectrum, which is too generic. Something that you've seen it before, another generic looking character design or a very generic landscape. We've seen it. It's not entertaining anybody, and that's kind of boring. So what I've charted here is the Goldilocks zone, I like to call it. You want your design to fall into this zone, and you do notice it swings towards the generic side. The reason for this is because we are in mass market production. We are designing for millions and millions of people. So when you start to go into too crazy or different to be different, you are going to start to alienate your audience. You could go into the zone. For example, the far left over here, you could go into the zone, but your audience member that's going to start enjoying this kind of design is going to drop. Okay, again, for mass market products. Now, if it goes towards generic, now I hate to say this, but very well done generic content will still sell compared to things that are very bizarre. And you see that all the time in Hollywood, right? And also in major video games. Is that a good thing? Maybe not. But the thing is, all you gotta do is reach about here, right? You're not too generic. You are still trying to push the design envelope, and you can still get great solutions without have to resort to different to be different, right? Because that at the end of the day, you're not solving anything. And your major product, especially for students trying to get into the industry, if your portfolio is nothing but different to be different, it's quite hard to find a job because you guys are entering into a product industry. Companies are making these things for mass audiences. So you have to understand what this zone is about. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Goldilocks zone. By the way, this entire talk is not absolute. Right, there's a lot of variance going here. What I'm talking about is the industry as a whole, and as a designer, especially for students, how do you get yourself into the market and how do you design? Okay, so let's talk about the Goldilocks zone. First, is it relatable to humans? Super vital. We are designing products. Video games and films are aimed at other human beings, so when they watch these kind of things, they have to relate to them. If you do alien emotions, alien worlds, alien everything, what happens is the audience have a hard time relating to the content. They have no idea what they're supposed to feel or they're supposed to see if it's not relatable to us. And we'll talk about that in the following slides. Next, include pop culture references. Very important. The reason for this is because a lot of pop culture has been built up in the last 50, 100 years, and you could write up that build. You don't have to reset it. For example, let's look at a pirate captain. The standard pirate captain is a guy kind of big, muscular, maybe he's missing like a leg or something like that. He's got a big pirate hat on, got a skull on it, got an eye patch. That's your classic pop cultural pirate captain. Do they really dress like that in the real world? Probably not. They probably dress like any other captain from a regular ship. They don't have pirate things on them. The reason why we have all those kind of skulls and eye patches is because it's popular culture. And once you see that pirate, you get it. Beer companies use that, entertainment companies use that, the Pirates of the Caribbean uses that, the Assassin's Creed with one of the ships uses that. They don't reset that because you're getting all that pop culture stuff for free. When you see that old captain with the beard and the pipe coming out of his mouth and the eye patch, you instantly get everything that come before it. Right? All that pop culture references that come before that your IP, you get all that for free. Versus I could design a captain that wears bright red, has a cone hat on, has a maybe let's see, a peacock as a pet, and I could call that a captain of a ship too. And there's no reason why you cannot, right? That could be cool. But now you're starting to reset that pop culture. And when someone sees that and you introduce that character as a captain of this old pirate ship, your audience is going to take some time getting used to that concept. They're like, I don't know, man, this is kind of weird, you know? Would that work? Maybe. But it just makes your job a little bit harder, and the production cost might go up higher for you to reset the audience to sell that, when maybe there's no need to, right? Instead, let's focus on the story. Let's focus on the ships. Let's focus on the gameplay. These are things we could spend time on as a concept artist versus like, I'm going to reset the pirate captain for no reason, just for the sake of resetting him. And again, we'll talk about that as the slides go forward, okay? And when or when not to reset certain designs. Next, capture everyday experiences. Again, relating to human beings. We want to experience sadness, happiness, things that we know how they work versus you introducing something you don't understand. The very popular everyday experiences a lot of films and games use is the underdog, the coming of age type of backgrounds, right? You get a nobody, basically like Neo from Matrix or Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. You could relate to them because they're just like you and I, just a nobody, working on a farm in terms of Luke, and suddenly they discover that they're the savior of the entire galaxy, right? Something like that. They do it that way because you could relate to it. Imagine Luke Skywalker started out as a prince who inherited everything. He lives completely in a world that we don't even understand, and that's the entire story arc, and he never goes through a character arc. It's hard to relate to him because you don't know who he is. There's something that you cannot reference to. So important for that. Next, reference past history. This again goes back to the pirate ship thing. History and culture is great. They come with thousands of years of understanding. You don't necessarily have to reset them. All you gotta do is build upon them, right? Let's take Black Flag, for example, the Creed game. They didn't reset pirate ships. They didn't reset tall ships. They didn't reset all the Spanish towns, the English towns. They kind of made it into an entertainment product by writing on the past. So things you recognize, the tall ships, the birds, the islands, the palm trees, these are things you all understand because pop culture and past history have built that for the last few hundred years. You know how it works. You all gotta do is ride that wave, right? Let it come for free. Versus something, for example, we tell our students, you're gonna go home and you're gonna come up with a culture. You're like, forget the Mayans, forget the Egyptians, forget the Greeks, forget the Romans and the Chinese and the Japanese culture. I'm gonna make my own culture. So those civilizations been around for thousands of years, 4,000 or 5,000 years, thousands, millions of people contributing to the overall cultural growth and the architecture and the arts and the music and the costumes, right? It took them that long to establish that kind of culture. Now you're a student, you're 18 years old, just got into design school, in front of you is a white piece of canvas, and in one night you're going to come up with your own culture of fashion and architecture. Is it possible? Sure. But is it likely? Quite low, because when we see students try that, it generally doesn't come out too good. It just feels very, very light. And the reason it's not their fault, it's just that they're chewing on something that's way, way too big. Okay, instead, if you want to build a new culture, let's start with the Mayans, for example, and build upon that. So that way you get to learn how ancient culture works, you write its popular culture references, and then you introduce your design, what I call the 10% change. Okay. Next, easy to understand visually. We are working in the visual industry, movies and games. When you watch a trailer, the visuals doing probably 90% of the work at that point. So we have to make sure that whatever you design, it can be explained visually. Versus my old teacher used to say, when you are watching a movie, he'll be like, wouldn't it be nice if half an hour into the film, it just pauses and some guy comes down to the audience, go, okay, for those who don't understand the film, this spaceship is supposed to do this, and this guy is supposed to be that, and this landscape is supposed to be that. Unfortunately, that does not happen, and also we probably do not want that to happen because it would be very disruptive. Therefore, when you're designing a character like a bad guy versus a good guy versus a flying spaceship that goes forward versus vertically, we kind of have to understand that from a visual perspective right off the bat. Probably within a few seconds, you know what it does versus having someone explain that. Now, is it possible to do more complex design? Of course it is. It just depends on the production. But for this slideshow, where design thinking episode, I'm trying to get you guys to design very cool things, very easy to understand, makes your job easier, but at the same time deliver very cool content. So these are out there to kind of make your job a little bit easier, basically. All right, so build upon what's come before. I already mentioned that, which is don't do a total reset. You don't have to reset the architecture, reset the landscape, reset the weather system, reset the character, reset the costume design, reset the animals, the life, and the plants. When you start to do that, it's almost like, why are you resetting everything? Entertainment design is not about being different. Entertainment design is about delivering an experience. Things that are real, things that already exist, are just as entertaining as things that you're coming up from scratch, right? Our job here is not to always do things different. Our job is to deliver a experience. Okay, so if a 14-year-old kid has never experienced, say, Roman culture, right? None of us have, actually, right? It doesn't exist anymore. And as a studio, you take the time to figure out the architecture, the language, the music, the costumes, and you put that together. Even though everything's derived from reality, you have created a reality show, right? An entertainment reality show. So that's just as good as a total sci-fi game or a total alien-based shooter or something like that. They're all entertainment properties. So it doesn't have to be zero total reset. Okay, next is entertainment before functionality. We are working in games and films, and we are working in entertainment. So make sure that you gotta balance your time right. Sometimes you see a student who spends way too much time trying to figure out how something works. Now, as designers, we want to solve that. We want to get to that level of nerddom or geekydom, right? To like, okay, this gear, when you pull it here, it makes this gear move and it makes this function. Okay, that's great, but at what expense? If you're spending too much time to make it work at the expense of entertainment, then you're no longer really doing your job correctly. For example, we could do a spaceship and make it completely functional from a NASA perspective. But would that make a good sci-fi video game? Probably not. And that's why when you look at games like Star Citizen or Star Wars and Star Trek, spaceships work like spaceships after they're flying in the atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? They have wings, they have engines, most have aerodynamic properties to them. Then you look at NASA spaceships, they don't even look like anything that fly on Earth, right? They're boxes and spheres and rockets all over the place because that's reality. So you have to balance that out. Depends on what kind of product you're making. Just keep in mind, at the end of the day, we're here to entertain people. So you have to make sure that doesn't get overwritten by making everything functional. Okay, we're doing the visual functionality, and that's important. It doesn't have to be true functionality. Okay, next is start from a solid existing foundation. Right? Again, related to the total reset thing. Don't start from zero, especially when you're a student, when you're learning. You learn so much more by building upon what's come before you, like taking the Mayan culture and build on top versus starting from zero. Okay, next is solve design problems first, then focus on the art. Okay, and that's what this whole slide's about. Once you have the bigger picture in your head, when you start sketching, it goes so much easier. You don't have to be struggling and drawing, go, man, what am I taking this design? What am I getting at? And sometimes we see students just struggling with just random stuff on the page, and whatever they arrive at, that's their design. And it's not thought out. It's simply because it's arrived at some sketching or some shapes. That works for certain things. That works extremely well for professionals because they generally have an idea what they're doing anyways before they start. But for students, they draw a random shape and they try to convert it back into a design. And they have a hard time getting that entire process down because when you start to do, say, costumes and vehicle design, because that one design is derived from almost randomness, the design overall picture wasn't established to begin with, and they have a hard time fleshing out the entire world. So we'll get to that again a little bit later. So I put a couple of popular culture things here, video games and films, that addresses all of these. So the first one is Star Wars. We have Final Fantasy VII, Skyrim, and these are two indie games here. This is Banner Saga, Minecraft, and of course the last one is Lord of the Rings. And if you look at these key terms, they apply to all of them. You look at Star Wars, it's a very human story. You have an underdog who is Luke Skywalker. You have the popular culture of samurais, World War II. You got swords. You got the classic good versus evil, the under tiny rebels versus a giant evil empire. These are all things that are very easy to understand. And Star Wars, of course, is a very visual-driven IP that kind of built the entire foundation of entertainment design as the how entertainment is delivered. Okay, so that's the kind of the classic. Here I put Final Fantasy VII. This is Midgard. Actually we did a design cinema based on this, right? I put this here more for functionality from a visual perspective point of view. Is that if you ask somebody who never played this game before, or don't even know what this is, and you ask them, what do you think this does? Okay, what do you think the functionality of this does? I don't think they're going to tell you this is a place in which cute bunny rabbits are raised in this eco-friendly farm and to decrease ozone layer effects or something like that. They're not going to tell you that. In fact, I think most people tell you it looks like some kind of factory. But yet this factory is something that doesn't exist on Earth. However, they're using pop culture references and past history and not a total reset to sell that to you. Okay, in terms of past cultural things, chimney stacks, piping, green kind of toxic colors, toxic yellow, metal everywhere, artificial lights. These are all little signals that are built from pop culture references to tell you this is a factory. This is a man-made manufacturing system of some kind. What is it exactly doing doesn't really matter. Shinra could be extracting gas from the planet. This could be refinery for mining. This could be a nuclear power plant. It could all work. The goal here for this design really is an industrial complex. That's what it's doing, and it's doing a great job at that because it's addressing a lot of past cultural references, right? And these are things as a designer you have to take that into consideration. If your job is to design an industrial thing that's hurting the planet, those are the same kind of popular cultural marks you'll probably be using yourself. Chimney stacks, metal, artificial materials, and these kind of things. Versus you build a factory, it's all made out of logs, and it's got a lot of green trees everywhere, just deers running around. Would that be possible? Of course it is. And in fact, the real world starts to do that, right? But in terms of entertainment, that visually is not selling it directly to your audience. They look at it and go, what? That doesn't look like a factory, an evil empire looking thing, right? It's a harder sell. Next, we have Skyrim. You look at this game, you're like, wait, everything looks kind of like exactly what we think it looks like, right? A dragon looks like a dragon, a snowy mountain looks like a snowy mountain, a temple looks like a temple, a village looks like a village. Because the goal of this game, they know exactly who their audiences are. These are the guys who read books probably when they're young, novels by David Eddings and Tolkien and these kind of things. And what this game delivered is a perfect visual example of the stuff you've been seeing in your head for the past 20 something years. Okay, so when you read a book about dragons swooping down from the snowy mountains and grabbing a deer or something like that, Skyrim delivers that. So in the case like that, they're not trying to be extremely different. They're just taking something you already understand and they're going to entertain you 100%. And that's why I think this game also did really, really well, because a lot of us know what snowy mountains look like, or not know, but kind of had the feeling for what it looks like. A lot of us know how the feeling of a dragon as he flies, and this game pretty much takes all that and deliver it right in front of you like a nice steak on a plate, right? It's done exactly the way it is. They're not doing dragons with triple heads or one that has twin tails and spits out weird toxic green fumes or something like that, right? They're not doing that. They're doing the classic RPG approach to design, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is still entertainment design. Okay, indie games, I put these here for a reason. They're indie games, but yet they still follow these bullet points. Bana Saga is based on Viking Nordic kind of mythology, right? You got the whole Viking thing, you got all the snow and stuff. Now this is not following real world scale, but it does follow real world cultural references. This way they could write that stuff for free. Okay, by having a Viking building back here, by having the snow, you're getting all the past stuff, all your Thors, your tons of Viking stuff out there, right? They're getting all that stuff for free. And therefore, the audience don't have to be reset or retold how this culture works. They get it. They know how your world works. Now, what is your story about? And that's where they can spend their time focusing, right? We have Minecraft, which is a game in which you can build whatever you want. It's a Lego game. But yet, if you look at the top 10 most popular Minecraft builds, you notice there are things that are relatable to human beings, like in this case the Game of Thrones buildings. You also see like great waterfall cities with big trees. You can relate to these things, and that's why human beings like them, right? They're like, that one's kind of cool, but I don't get it. So generally these kind of things are relatable, and they get voted up. And Lord of the Rings is just like Star Wars, very similar story, bunches underdogs against a huge evil empire, tons of popular cultural references, World War II, and Tolkien was inspired heavily by World War II, visually very easy to understand, and tons of past cultural references. In fact, most of the cultures are based on some culture that come before it in the real world, right? And Tolkien took that and started that as a strong foundation and built upon that. Okay, so all right, let's go to the next one. All right, one more slide before we get into design thinking, which is this slide really, really important for students, which is just because you can't doesn't mean you need to. When you are a designer, I mentioned a few minutes ago, your job is not to design everything from scratch. You don't need to be different to be different. Your job is to deliver entertainment experience. So just because you could design something different doesn't mean you need to, okay? And not everything has to be different. A mountain sometimes is good as a mountain. You don't have to make it multiple spikes. You don't have to make a village different to be different. And I'll mention that in the next two slides, why that is, okay? Familiarity is important. We are designing for mass audience. functionality is easy to recognize, understand the bigger picture. These few things I'll go over in the next 2 slides, right? So I put these 2 things here of reason, a fork and a spoon, because they are fine as they are. We've been using these for hundreds of years. We don't need to reset these designs. You don't have to go in here and add little things here or change the spoon or make an alternate way to eat or something like that. They work just as fine. Instead, design the restaurant around them. Okay, and that's a good analogy when it comes to entertainment design, is that certain things remain the same and other things you change. So the first slide, we're going to cover that. Boom. We have some inns and tavern designs that I have taken some screenshots from the net from various video games. Here on the upper left is Baldur's Gate 1, I believe. This is Final Fantasy 9. We have Dragon Age, which is also made by the same company that made this game here, BioWare. We have Diablo 3. Down here is Skyrim. This is Witcher 2. This is Final Fantasy 7. And this is Chrono Trigger. Now you notice for the tavern ones, look at the designs here. There's a barrel, round table, barrel, round table, barrel, round table, barrel, squarish table, but wood table, barrel, barrel right here, table, barrel right here, table, right? You look at these like, wait a second, they're all from very different video games, but yet the inn and taverns look exactly the same. They're almost exactly the same in terms of design, right? These are little inns, right? See the table here as well. Old games, 1995 or something like that. Still very similar designs. This is a case in which you have to understand these 2 key points, right? One is understand what's come before it, right? Familiarity is important. 2, let's address this one first. When we look at an inn from a global perspective in terms of video game design, what is it for? Yeah, for most inns, probably 90% of the time, an inn is a place in which players are going in to get their quest, to save the game in terms of consoles, and to find a place to share stories, to meet other NPCs, to gather party members, right? It's generally a safe haven in video games. After they have spent 5 hours in a dungeon fighting a really hard boss, using up all their items, totally stressing out, barely survived the night, now it's going to make their way into an inn. You want them to feel safe. Once they enter that door, you want the warm candlelight, you want the sound of the tavern, you want the beer being poured, you want all the audiences, everyone kind of gossiping around. That's the purpose of an inn. And that's why these games tend to take on the same solution. Now, as a junior artist, they could come and go, you know what, Diablo and Dragon Age, they all do the same inn. I'm just going to do a different inn just to be different. And this is the case you have to ask yourself why. Okay, we could make an inn that's in a cave. The beds are hung on chains on the ceiling. The beer comes from a dragon that chews a fruit. He chews it 50 times and spits into a pot and you drink that. We can make all the NPC hang upside down and talking to you upside down on chains. When you look at this, like, okay, it's different. It's different. I've never seen an inn like that. But you have to ask the question, why are we doing that? The inn serves a certain purpose. All that energy poured into that design could be used elsewhere. Use that maybe for the boss levels. Use that for the exploration of dungeons. For certain designs like that, it has so much popular culture references that sometimes you don't have to change that much. Spend the time drawing it nicely, put the right details in, but you don't have to do a total reset of such things. And this is coming just from experience of working with various designers. Sometimes you do work with junior artists who feel like they have to be different. Everything they do has to be different. And you take very classically established designs like an inn, they change it. And from our director's point of view, it's like, oh man, why? What's the purpose here? The story doesn't need this to be changed. Spend that time elsewhere. Let's work on the boss level and stuff like that. So these are things that are important for younger students to understand. And 2, when you have something like this, locked to popular culture, you also have to understand the kind of elements that goes inside. Like the barrel thing. Look all these games, they all have the barrel going here. Because these are things that players almost expecting. Now, can you try something different? Of course you can. We could try. If the context ask for it. If you're working on a classic RPG, the chances of changing it in from away from this look is quite rare. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Now the next one is functionality is easy to recognize. I have shown some examples of sniper rifles from various games. We have Halo, Borderlands, Mass Effect, we got Deus Ex, Team Fortress, Destiny, Fallout 3, Crysis, and Titanfall. Okay, these are all sniper rifles. And you notice especially these 2. This is from Borderlands, the Mass Effect one. This is a energy sniper rifle. This one's some kind of laser rifle. Both of these don't shoot projectiles, right? The traditional cartridge, the magazine bullets. They're shooting light. And we all know light does not require a chambered barrel, right? One that's makes a bullet spin and make it very accurate. You don't need that for light. In fact, a sphere with some reflectors in it probably works just as good as one that has a barrel. So why put barrels on a sniper rifle that shoots lasers? The reason for this is because it's functionality. If you're working on, say, a FPS game or some kind of shooter, this has been ingrained in popular culture, in which a sniper rifle is always long and has a barrel, an SMG is medium size, and a handgun is a small little thing, and a shotgun is always kind of heavy with a double barrel. These are designed, if you look at the real world, a lot of guns are starting to not to follow that, right? Lasers are starting to come on board. Look at DARPA with the laser. It is a sphere. It is a sphere with a couple reflectors in it. But would that make a good gun in an FPS game? Probably not, right? And these are things you have to understand from a designer point of view. Is like, okay, where do you want to put your work in? Do you really need to reset this design or do what these guys are doing, which is you're resetting the silhouette, resetting the details and some of the cool parts, but retain the overall understanding of what this thing does? Okay, so hopefully you guys are not getting confused, because we are talking about design, we want to do new things, but these are cases in which understand the bigger picture. Not only are you designing something new, at the same time you have to get grounded on things that are already established, and very, very hard to change these things out. Okay, even on Advanced Warfare, we're working on the early days of Advanced Warfare. We're looking at a lot of different ways to do weapons, but at the end of the day, look at the game now, look at the sniper rifle, look at the SMG, they pretty much look like today's guns, even though they're supposed to be in the future. Sniper rifle is still long. I think it's a pulse rail gun or something like that, and they have in there, but it's still a long barrel gun. It shoots light, but it has a long barrel. Right? Those are things that are very hard to switch out, especially for a tactical or first-person shooter game in which you're doing multiplayer. The player has to recognize these things from a silhouette point of view. It's like, oh, long barrel, grab it, it's a sniper rifle. Okay, now let's get to the 8 slides that is going to hopefully help you guys come up with design thinking in a very quick way. And I want you guys to ask, what if? Okay, so the following 8 slides, each one is going to come up with a different way to combine designs or rethink design to come up with something very, very quick, but yet works really well. Okay, let's go on to slide number 1. All right, mix familiar surroundings, number 1. So the way this works is that the top and the bottom, we combine them. Okay, I put 4 examples up here and 4 examples down here. These are all things as human beings we relate to. They have pop culture references, they have history references, they have cultural references, they have functionality references. All of these come for free. As a designer, you don't have to reset them. The pyramids of Egypt is cool, the temples of Japan are cool, the mosque in Turkey is awesome, this giant castle is cool, and vice versa on the landscape stuff. Snowy mountains really cool, canyons cool, swamp, waterfall. They're all very interesting things. But yet we have never seen both of these together. Right? We have never seen pyramids in the snow. But why not? By combining it, you're not losing anything. You're just gaining things, because you gain everything that pyramid's going to give you for free, and you're getting everything a snowy mountain's going to give you for free. And by putting the two together, it's a very easy sell to your audience. And you can actually make an IP based on that. For example, the Earth axis rotated and it's really cold, and the ancient Egyptians, 1,000 years before they went away, maybe they turned to snow. And you build your whole game around that, right? The entire IP is based on ancient cultures you recognize, but in a complete different climate. And that is cool, because you don't have to reset. We still got the Sphinx, we still got all the jackals and the cats and all that kind of stuff that you get from Egypt, but now it's located in the landscape that looks like the Himalayas, right? Very, very easy visual sell. Same thing, for example, a Japanese temple in Grand Canyon. Two never come together, but very, very cool as a visual. And this is, for example, this mosque in a swamp, really cool. And this one has been done, right? Ancient castles surrounded by waterfall. We have seen a variety of video games use this combination because castles are very cool, waterfalls are very cool. You put it on top, even though real life, that doesn't really make much sense. But remember, we're doing entertainment design. The two looks gorgeous together. And there's so many RPGs that actually use this exact combination. Okay, now these are just 4 examples. These 8 slides are meant for you to explore outside that, right? So you can look at other cultures, like, okay, what if Mayans are in the desert, for example, right? These are all things you could just quickly combine and gives you a foundation. This is not the end solution. Okay, none of these slides are the end solution. What they are is your first step. Grounded design gives you a very solid starting point, so then you can morph and evolve your design from this point on, right? Because once we have, for example, Egypt in the snow, now you could be like, okay, it's snow, maybe the chariots doesn't work anymore, camels doesn't work anymore, maybe these Egyptians are now adopting deers for transportation and these kind of things, right? But you're grounded in the overall picture. You know what to do. You know what the costume should look like. In this case, you have to wear winter clothes. You know how the vehicles will work. They might have used some ski mechanism, right? It just starts you off in a very clear design direction. Okay, next. Play with scale. Human beings, we like to see things really big, and we also acquire interesting when things are really small. It's just human curiosity, right? You've seen a lot of artists do this. Like, for example, the guy in Hong Kong a few years back took a rubber ducky and built a giant version of it and float around in Hong Kong Harbor. And it was in the front page of so many newspapers and stuff like that because it's cool. You're like, oh, rubber ducky, but it's giant. It's awesome. That works really well in entertainment. So in this case, you could go big. I just took some buildings here, made it really big, and it looks cool. I took a bonsai tree, which is generally very, very small, and just kind of scaled it up in Photoshop to show you what it looks like it's big. And you see a lot of video games use this. Secret of Mana, Legend of Zelda, I think Final Fantasy might have this kind of stuff, Prince of Persia. A lot of video games have the giant tree. It's just because trees are cool, and scale it up bigger is even cooler, right? So it's a very easy design to do. And you can do this with a variety of things, not just trees and buildings, right? Next, I took a fish, just made it big, right? This fish is tiny, but now it's big. It's kind of cool, right? And then you make it float. And later, I'll be showing the following slides. Don't forget, you could combine a lot of these things together, okay? You could do giant tree, okay, one, and then you place it, boom, in the canyon, you see? Or giant tree, place it on a waterfall, right? You know what I'm saying? So you could take these things and start combining to mix your designs and just very quickly come up with a solid foundation. Next, mega storm, right? So you take a storm that's generally very small and make it really big. And we saw that in movies like the Mummy, Mummy series, right? The desert storms are always like ginormously huge. It just looks cool visually. Next, we could go small versus big, right? So this one is like a root. Zoom in, look how cool that is. That could be like an alien base. It could be some kind of village outskirts that the land's all ravaged by some kind of disease or something. Really cool looking stuff. Here's some water drops, which could be the surface of a planet. Here is a snowflake, which could be the blueprint for a high-tech floor plan. These typewriter keys could be a cryo chamber. When you look down and zoom in on tiny things, they're also extremely interesting. And these are shapes that we could recognize, but at the same time, it's also very foreign. And that's exactly what we want in design. You're changing a small percent of the design, right? Like the tree, you're not changing anything. You're just changing its scale. And instantly, you give a cool design solution, and then you spend the time drawing and painting that out versus twiddling your thumb and trying to come up with something original and different and going nowhere as time ticks by. All right, next. Apply reskin. This is very common in entertainment design. The first one I put here, you guys all recognize. I'm sure you guys all seen Ghost in the Shell, in which there's a little spider robot in there. You guys seen a lot of this kind of variations on the internet, right? This little kind of insect-like mechs. I draw a lot of them myself, and that's a reskin. Reskin basically means you take something that we recognize that has functionality, like a spider, and you put this type of material on top of it. So you put machines on a spider, instantly cool design. And why does that work so well? It's because we all know how the spider walks. We know sort of how the spider functions. It already looks kind of like a machine anyways. So when you design something like this, like a reskin, the animators know how to do it, the sound guys know how to treat this, and the player, if it's a video game, could probably recognize how this guy will walk, simply because they could associate this design with past references, in this case a spider, right? They could also associate the machine parts because they've seen that in construction vehicles, they've seen that on mechanized robots. So the two combined, you don't have to sell them anything. They already understand how it works, and that's what makes reskin such an easy way to design. Next, we have a spaceship. Imagine instead of having solid skin, it's transparent. So imagine you're playing a game like Star Citizen or something as a cargo ship. Instead of having some kind of X-ray scan, maybe our cargo ship has a translucent skin where the cargo is. And then the police or border control or something could just visually check the content inside just by looking, right? So that's a very simple concept because we get how this works. We know how this works. Boom, put together, you have a new concept you've never seen before, but you don't have to resell that to the audience. Next is here's a play on words, right? Here's an armor, but you reskin this armor with this kind of technology. Again, games like Final Fantasy have done this. You see them doing airships and high technology mechs and guns and swords and stuff like that, but yet they're built with this very low tech design, right? Like the airship in Final Fantasy, I mean, that's a high tech piece of equipment, but yet it looks like it's made from medieval technology of pounding metal in together. But the solution is very cool because we know how this works. Put together, new visual, just as entertaining. Next, we have this Egyptian sarcophagus. So hard to pronounce. This comes with a ton of cultural references, right? We all know what this is. We all think this is quite cool. Now imagine that's being reskinned by carbon fiber, this thing the pilot is wearing. Carbon fiber is a very advanced material used in F1, using a lot of advanced jet military kind of planes and stuff like that. Beautiful material. Imagine you're playing a sci-fi game, or even if you're playing a Tomb Raider type game or something, and you go into a tomb, and here is a coffin in the middle lit by a moonlight, and instead of having a gold coffin here, it's made out of this black carbon fiber. I mean, that's a sexy design, and you get so much cultural references from that design for free, right? And then as a designer, you just focus on getting the good references, painting the right material, and you have this beautiful design. You don't have to sell anything. Everything's really delivered to your audience. All the cool factors that come with carbon fiber and Egyptians all built in. Okay, Next, we have introduce or remove technology. Yet another design thinking process that's used by entertainment all the time. Here, let's remove technology. We take something like, or introduce technology. We have something like London, and let's introduce, for example, what if 1800 London had fusion generators? What would that do? Okay, just fusion generators, nothing else. In fact, you saw a game come out recently, the Water 1866 is something like that, right? They have I haven't played the game yet, but from what I've seen, it looks like they have some kind of either steampunk technology or something like that. But the rest of the world still looks like England, because we all know how this works. We don't want to reset this world. This world is really very, very cool, right? Harry Potter and Mary Poppins and all these kind of things, right? They have kind of showcased England, especially this time period in England, to be a very interesting place, right? Sherlock Holmes and stuff. By introducing a new technology into it, you still retain the cultural coolness of this thing, but now you're introducing a 10% change that's going to give your audience a different experience. Same thing goes for Romans. What if Romans could build a rocket? And remember, you could always combine, right? Imagine the Romans build a rocket and it's built with this type of armor design, right? So it's pounded together, but yet it's high technology in which they could go to space. That's a very cool visual. Next, let's remove technology. So in this case, what if feudal Japan, okay, you ask yourself, what if feudal Japan never industrialized, never met with the Europeans, never came into contact with Americans, and just continued going down the feudal Japan road for the next 100 years? What would that look like? Such a cool IP to build on. You could address that to not only Japan, you could do it for like, what if the Mayans continue to exist and never have outside contact? What if the Aztecs continue for another 1,000 years with the Romans or whatever, right? Place it with any kind of culture. That's a starting point of a beautiful design challenge. Next is, let's remove technology from a biological point of view. What if eyes never was developed on a planet? What would that do to the creatures of this planet? Would they have to develop better ears? Or would they work on sonar, work on smell? Is it touch? Or is it some kind of other type of thing that they're experiencing in the world around them? Beautiful design challenge, very easy to understand. It's a one-sentence sell to your audience, right? Planet, no eyes, boom, done, you're done, right? And they'll understand how the rest of the solution comes about. So this guy had a big sonar dome. We're like, okay, that's how it works, right? So let's go next one. Different life development, another easy way to think about things. We all know how the top things here work: tree, fish, human being, machine. We know how the bottom stuff work. We have lightning storms, we have volcanic eruption, we have this metamorphosis, and we have this embryo evolving as it goes through its stages of development. Now imagine combine them. What if trees get their energy from lightning? Such a cool visual. Imagine a forest at night, this thing storms and they absorb the energy. Again, going back to the key words here, you don't have to reset. The audience sees this and they think it's quite cool. Imagine playing a video game and they tell you, well, don't go to the forest when it's raining, because when the lightning strikes, all the trees are going to be electrified, and if you go there, you're toast. That's a game player. You don't have to do anything to sell that. They get it. And when they see the visual of like big lightning, come down, hit a tree, and you see the VFX going to the tree, the thing glows for about a second or so, and all the ground around it kind of electrifies. You don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to explain it. The player will look at it, go, oh, I get it. And that changes gameplay, and it's an easy sell in terms of visual communication to your audience. Next would be like, okay, what if we have life in a habitable environments like a volcano, lava? These are places you're not expecting life forms. By simply putting it there, you're delivering a new experience. So if you're walking around in this gaseous volcanic cloud and these floating bubbly fish goes by, cool visual, well, what if life goes through metamorphosis, right? Human beings, we don't do that, but insects do. Take a sip, water. Okay, so what if humans have to develop this way? What would that do to the design? There's some kind of preform, goes through some kind of egg, some kind of cocoon, then we come out, right? You see that movie Aliens explore this, right? The alien, the way they evolve is kind of like that, where get into the final form is through ingestion, pop out your belly, and then turn into a big old alien, right? So, and here the last one is you take something like a organic concept and apply it to a machine. Here we have an embryo of a bat developing through its few months of stage, and here's an old machine. What if you take this concept and add it to a machinery? And this is something we actually have been exploring in our own design studio. For example, for FPS shooter, Imagine you're playing a game in which the gamer is directly responsible for how the AI is going to reshape itself. The AI start with a very simple robot. You start shooting it with the RPGs. You do it enough, the robot's going to figure out, hey, wait a second, this guy's like using heavy weapon on me. I'm going to start evolving heavier armor. It's going to make them super hard to kill, but at the same time, it's going to slow them down. So a gamer could plan that ahead of time by shooting them with RPGs all the time, making the robots extremely heavy and impossible to kill, basically. But they're very, very slow. So as you get to later stages, you switch to speed as your alternative, right? You invest in skill points in speed and stealth and so forth. And because you evolve the robots to be heavy, you can now use that to your advantage. Or you can do the vice versa. You start the game by shooting them extremely with light weapons like SMGs. These robots are going to start dodging you. They're going to start getting lighter and lighter and become very fast. And then you invest your points into heavy armor and heavy guns. So later you start blowing them up with heavy machinery, and they haven't prepared themselves for that. So you can see how powerful a simple concept could become, not only in your design side, but could actually influence the entire development of the product itself. So, all right, Next, alternate functionality. All right, so this is something that's also used a lot. Okay, all these slides, by the way, have been used a lot by entertainment, but here I'm just putting a slide form. So for those who are students, you can see like, wow, man, maybe I'm overthinking things. Let's start with the basics, right? So alternate functionality is exactly that. You take something, you understand how it works, and reapply a different function to it. So in the first case, we have this kind of French period, very over-the-top interior bedroom here, right? And we have this high-tech kind of airplane interior. So imagine something like this is actually the control station for a high-tech space station. In the case I tell our students is like, imagine like someone like Saddam Hussein or something like that, some crazy dictator who's got billions of dollars in the future, right? In a sci-fi game. Are they going to build a space station that's going to look like NASA or like a Halo, all militarized? Of course not, because look what they do currently on Earth, right? They build these crazy palaces, completely over the top because they have so much money and so much resources. They want to show that stuff off. So if you have someone who's in the future sci-fi game, you have this crazy rich, sci-fi Saddam Hussein or something like that. They might build a space station that look like that, and they have computers embedded in the frames. They might have some keys. That's a beautiful solution. In fact, you see some of that in the game, for example, Deus Ex, Human Revolution. They have some kind of a Renaissance architecture going in their designs, but yet it's embedded with technology. It's an easy sell because we know how this works. We know how this works. You combine it, we understand the concept. Next, oil platform, really cool design. We all know how this works, but imagine once you go inside one of these, it's a fort, like a castle. We know how this works. We know how this materials works. Boom, put together, simple sell. Next, we have this organ. This really looks like a computer to me. Look how cool this is, right? All these little dials and buttons and all these keys. Such a cool design. Imagine I take this old school Apple computer screen here and just drop it right over here. Now you got a steampunk computer, and such an easy sell. Your audience look at that, go, man, that's awesome, And then you apply reskin, right? So you put this screen over here, then you go back to reskin, which is over here, and make it out of, say, this material. Boom, you're done. We'll make it out of carbon fiber, right? So you have this very, very fun to design things to make something new, but at the same time, you're not actually designing anything new. You're just combining. Right? Next, we have a train. Trains are cool. Almost all art directors like trains. It's such a better cultural machinery. And then we have this kind of old city here. What if the carriages that the train is carrying is a city? Again, another easy sell. This train travels down the track for hundreds of years, and people just continually live on this moving city. And the poor neighborhoods, the rich neighborhood, and just this massive, 1,000-car train. And here, you're just using two things and just changing its functionality. All right, let's go to the next. Now, this one doesn't have combination behind. This is more for the art students, especially for those who are a little bit younger. Okay, this is just coming from experience from teaching. Sometimes we get, say, 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids here who are growing up mostly based on video games. Now, nothing wrong with that, but sometimes their entire influence is coming from video games. And generally, we could tell. When they start putting designs down, we're like, oh man, you might not know how art movements work. You might not know some popular design movements. You're just basing everything off of video games. And that could hurt you because your portfolio could look very, very young. Okay, you want to study some past design references and also understand some popular languages. In fact, most of you guys have seen these in popular entertainment products, but you might not recognize the actual art movement that's behind it or the art style behind it. So down here we have Art Nouveau. Beautiful way of designing, one of my personal favorites as well. So Art Nouveau, you see the most famous one is the metro in Paris, the entrance, like this kind of green metallic kind of stuff. Art Nouveau is based on the natural world, so everything revolves around bones, plants, animal parts, and these kind of organic flowing lines to create the designs. Beautiful pattern. You see this in Spain, in Barcelona, I think has a couple of buildings by Gaudi. Beautiful stuff. Star Wars Episode 1, a lot of Star Wars ships in, what's that place called? Naboo, right? It's based on Art Nouveau. So it's a really strong and simple art style to use. Next, we have Art Deco, which is used heavily in like Batman, for example. Batman is Gothic and Art Deco, ton of this kind of stuff being used. So sometimes these kids, our students, they know the entertainment product, but they actually don't know where it comes from. They think it's from scratch, like Gotham City is an art style that's defined from scratch. But you look at it and no, it's heavily influenced from Art Deco. The buildings in there looks like Sears Towers. So these are things it's you have to almost understand it, because if you're working with an art director that do know these art movements and they tell the junior designer, hey, let's make the city Art Deco, and you get a blank stare in return, you're like, I might be working with a designer who knows really nothing about how the world works, and that's going to give you a disadvantage in the studio. Next is Rococo, this really over-the-top design here, that just total over-the-top spending, and every single corner of your room has to be covered in extravagant design. But that is beautiful design, and I think the Human Revolution, the Deus Ex, used some of this in their game. Next, you got should all recognize this style, which is Gothic, used in Dark Souls, in Devil May Cry, and there's so many games that use Gothic. But understand where it comes from, understand what makes Gothic architecture Gothic, right? And these are things right now with the internet, type in Wikipedia and just read about it. Understand a little bit of the background. So when you start to design, you can use it to your advantage. Up here are actually art movements or design movements. So we have the Jet Age, one of my favorite time periods, in which the 1950s, when jets started taking off all over the place, people thought that everything's going to start flying. So cars, of course, start to look like jets. And look at these beautiful, beautiful design passes on these cars. Looks like a jet engine. We have fins from a jet here. And that's a movement you can also translate. I would love to see a video game in which the sci-fi design is actually jet age driven. And remember the Jetsons? That's kind of something like that. But a little dated now, the Jetsons. But imagine you do a Mass Effect game or something like that. That kind of budget, that kind of development. But the designs are based on a 1950s jet age design. I think that'll look beautiful. I think the game Fallout 3, something like that, right? They have a retro sci-fi design, which I love. It's beautiful. Next, we have a 1970s design. A lot of primary colors, geometric forms. Beautiful design movement, also very usable. Next, we have the Hopeless Diamond. This is a case in which one design influences others, right? The Stealth Fighter debuted in 1991, I think during the first Gulf War. Everyone saw that and go, man, that is beautiful. And designers at Lamborghini is obviously borrowing that. Design language, you see the new Batmobile, right? Also use this type of language. So you can see how designs become very influential from popular culture. Next is this KitchenAid blender. Believe it or not, this design was done in 1930s. Still hasn't changed today. You go to the department store and buy this thing. It looks just like this today. That's a 75-year-old design, still valid today. And this is based on aeroplanes in the 1930s, right? Very streamlined, very aerodynamic. Used this anodized kind of metal look. Beautiful design, and it is timeless. And as a designer, understand the stuff around you. Look at past designs. Look at successful designs. Look at strong design movements. The one thing I didn't put here is fashion. Fashion actually go through a lot of design evolutions through the years, and that's something else you should also look into. Like I have a lot of books on fashion design because they also follow popular culture. All right, let's go to the next one. And the last slide here is, don't forget, the real world is cool. This goes back to our students. Sometimes everything they put up has to be different. Everything they put up has to be their own. Everything put up has to be their own little thing. And something like, man, come on, the real world is full of stuff that you don't even have to design anything, and you're delivering a beautiful entertainment experience. Up here, look at this classic cultures are great. Japanese culture, Egyptian culture, Mayan culture, African culture. These are all very, very beautiful things that you don't need to ignore. Right? Look at what man has made. We create some beautiful architecture, some immense, crazy scale type of stuff that you've never even seen before. We also develop things like this. Look at this tall ship. That is a beautiful design. In fact, the video game Assassin's Creed, right? Black Flag, based the entire IP on this thing right here. We've also developed crazy technologies, very advanced airplanes. This is a I don't know what this plane is, 767 maybe, right? That's some serious technology right here that we have developed, and you don't have to start from scratch. Look at these things and use it. Down here are nature things. Look at this landscape formation. That's almost alien, but yeah, it's real. Here, that's probably Thailand or somewhere in Southeast Asia. Beautiful landscape. Look how beautiful that looks right here. You have these insects that are almost look alien, yet this is real. Look at this bird, right, with this kind of crazy flap of skin here. These are really cool stuff, and all you gotta do is take that. Okay, imagine, let's take this guy over here, and we go back a few slides to this one, put it as a machinery, or reskin it to be like that. You're done, and then you apply this one, right? So then you scale it up. So let's just do that again. As a design exercise, take that guy, cool design, don't change a thing. Just draw him as is, reskin him to be like that, right? So it's made out of medieval armor and like really cool, pounded together with iron and all that kind of stuff. And then you scale it up like this tree, so it's big, right? Boom, you got a design that's really, really cool. And all you did is start with a solid foundation, and you really didn't have to apply anything too new. All right, so that's kind of wraps up the design thing. The next 2 slides is something that my friends at GDC asked me to do for the audience. So they're more like, one is the difference between designing for AAAs versus indie games. And the second slide is just some tips for freelancers. So I'll do those in as well for you guys, right? Since we're coming close to an hour here, let's try to wrap this up. So hopefully this episode's been entertaining. I know there's no drawing, but hopefully this is helping some of you guys who are just getting into the business as designers. Okay, so down the line, AAA versus indie. Big difference between the two is just money. Okay, AAA's got a lot of money. They got a lot of funding to make the game, and they also have a lot of money for marketing. Indie development generally means very little money to develop and almost no marketing money at all. So what are the main differences? And this is from my personal point of view of working this business. This is not universal, okay? So from an artistic and design point of view, hold on, let me get a drink of water. Actually, I'm drinking coffee, not water. Okay, first, photorealism art direction. Now, a lot of AAAs, like, we have to look photoreal. Everything's photoreal. Photoreal color palettes, photoreal textures, photoreal details, right? Photoreal. So we get that a lot. Next, focus on high details. This is at Advanced Warfare. I mean, we're going down designs, the nuts and bolts and logos and stickers and stuff like that on games like that, because they have the budget to do that. They could actually go down and design everything to the highest detail. And the game players who buys these kind of games are actually expecting that. When you release a AAA and the texture is blurry, look at the amount of complaints that the forums will get, right? So everything has to be like 2K, 4K textures, even like a little rock has to be like a 1K texture or something like that. Because the gamers are kind of expecting that. They're like, oh, you spent $80 million on a game and I pay $65 for it. I want a certain kind of experience to come out from it. So as a designer, you have to really draw everything. I mean, like, we're drawing like trash on the ground for this game. You know, when you look left, what do you see? When you look right, what do you see? You know, to that degree of detail. Down here is mass audience reach, which generally means less risk. I talked about this in my dragon sketching exercise. That's why I put this dragon here. The bigger your audience, the bigger the budget, the less the risk these AAAs tend to take in terms of design direction. Okay, so what they're doing is they're not necessarily giving you something different. They're just giving you something you've seen before in terms of say Skyrim, but they're going to deliver it to such a high standard, right? The snow is going to be beautiful, the landscape is going to be beautiful, the dragons are going to animate, it's going to have really good sounds, the texture is going to be beautiful. That's what they're going to spend their money on. Instead, they're not going to turn that into a unique design. For example, like, let's do a dragon that digs into the ground, converts to 5 baby dragons, and I'll pop out 5 different times, and then they're going to turn to smoke and go into the atmosphere and combine back together to a big dragon. That's pretty crazy. Probably a pretty cool design. Try to sell that to a game like Elder Scrolls, probably not going to work. You know what I'm saying? Because you're gonna piss off your audience like that. I never read that in an RPG book, right? So that's what these kind of AAAs do. Next is this is good for us, longer development cycle. So when you're on a AAA, you could be spending a year, sometime a year and a half, just in conceptual stage. That's quite nice for us to have the luxury of designing, because the content they need is massive. Sometimes you have to design 7 cities or dozens of landscapes in different environments. So you need the time to do so. On the indie side, things are a little bit different. I put Bastion here. Right? Concept art could become actual assets. So in case like that, you have I think her name is Jin Z is the concept artist's name. So she did the concept, but at the same time, her concept become the actual game assets as well, right? So everything here you see is done, I think, by one artist, right? So she come up with all the little designs of the buildings, but at the same time, the designs is the actual asset. So this saves them a lot of money, right? So you get the design and you can use it. So very different than these AAAs. The concept we do is never being seen by the audience here, right? The guys who are playing Advanced Warfare could care less about the concept art we did for it. But for Bastion, you're actually seeing the concept artist work directly in the game. Over here, Simpler visuals, polished delivery. So we have Journey here. It's a very simple art in terms of the details, but it's extremely well art directed. So they're spending their money on sound effects, maybe really smooth animations, these type of things, and delivering such a polished product. Now, are indie games, do they ignore details, stuff like? Of course not, but it just depends on what you're trying to do. Actually, in recent times, you're seeing, I think, what's that game that just came out? Worry versus, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a side scroller. Absolutely beautiful. That's actually looking like a AAA development, but it's an indie team, right? It's a very small team, but man, that game looks absolutely gorgeous. So if you haven't seen it, look it up. It's the first part is Worry, which is ORI. It's like Worry versus something. I can't remember. It just came out a few days ago, but beautiful looking game. So there are exceptions to this rule, right? Their graphics are extremely complex, but yet also extremely polished. But the cool thing that indie games tend to do is do this: take risk on design direction. You generally don't see this on AAA. Again, personal experience, right? There's a lot of games that break these rules just from what we see. Generally, when we get a call from an indie developer, for like Kickstarter projects, for example, they actually want the concept artist to explore different design directions. On AAAs, it's generally photoreal. It's already locked. You're not going to explore anything. A city is going to look like a city. A bank is going to look like a bank. A castle is going to look like a castle. You're doing photo textures. You're doing photorealism. But on indie game, they're like, let's try a couple passes. Let's try a 2D look. Let's try a cell shaded look. Let's try a kind of 2.5D cutout look, right? You get a lot of this kind of stuff, and it's great. It's really fun for concept artists to explore that. You actually see a lot of Japanese games do that, which I really applaud them for. You look at games like Persona, even like a Bravely Default, they try some really cool stuff in which they're doing like 2D textures, for example, on a 3D game. But you don't see that as much, I think, on the Western front. Not in the AAA side, I think. But I hope that'll change. I think games in the next 5 years or so, maybe we'll start to see some higher risk in terms of art and design, but with the budget of AAA. I think that'll be really, really cool to see. Next will be the reuse and recycle of design. Generally, indie games want you to recycle assets as much as possible, versus on the AAA side, they'll build everything from scratch, like the San Francisco level versus like the Africa level in this game. A lot of the assets are built from scratch because you have the money and the resource to do so. In a lot of indie games, that same wall is then used like 100 times, and as the level progresses, you're actually seeing art being recycled countless times because, again, that saves money. All right, so last slide before we end this episode is tips for freelancers. Boink. This is specifically for guys that are out there, maybe just starting a freelance career. So hopefully this will help you guys, right? Some tips. Okay, we got 8 of them here. So number 1, you register a company, not an individual. Many advantages to having a company. The main one is that when you're dealing as a company, it's much easier to secure bigger contracts, because in a company like Ubisoft or EA, they generally work with companies anyways, right? These companies are working with motion capture companies, sound studios, 3D outsource studios, or working with costume design studios, all sorts of variety of companies. And when they're doing that, they're used to the way the business works. When you're working as an individual, like a freelancer, you're John Smith, for example, you're dealing with them on an individual basis. And for them, mentally, they're not seeing you as a place to solve all their problems. They're not going to be like, oh, you're John Smith, let me load the entire concept needs for an entire studio to you, because they know as a person you can't even handle that kind of stuff anyways, right? You're just one person. But imagine instead of John Smith, you're called Hyperion Designs or something like that, right? All of a sudden the perception changes. It could still be you're just one person, but the perception changes to like, oh, this is a company. Would you like to take on the entire concept for us? We'll do this long-term contract. We'll have the entire budget all paid out, so you guys can handle all the designs. You could take on this contract and then hire other artists to help you, and that's how you could grow a company from an individual to a much bigger studio, right? Because the perception has changed, and also for tax reasons, it's a little bit easier as well. Individual, you're filing a personal tax. In terms of a company, you got to hold your earnings till later, so it makes it a little bit easier for cash flow and things like that. But let's not get into that here. A little bit complicated. Let's go next one. Under promise, over deliver. Something I'll be mentioning in Design Cinema a lot, which is when you're dealing with a client, don't over promise stuff, right? When the client goes, hey, can you give us 3 paintings? Your answer is, okay, 3 paintings. I think I'll try my best to get to 3. That's your answer, right? Instead of, 3 paintings, no problem, man. I'll give you 6, man. I'll give you 6 paintings by Friday or whatever. Now let's come to Friday. The first answer was 3. Imagine you go 3, you could do it, right? And on Friday you give them 5. the clients will be like, well, that's awesome. We asked for 3 and you give us 5 paintings. That's awesome, because you never told them that you're going to do 5. So you over deliver, they're surprised. Now imagine next the second guy who said they want to do 6 and something happens and you only deliver 4. Okay, they're like, 4, I thought you're gonna give us 6, right? They're like, what happened, right? Their expectation has already been raised, but then you didn't meet it. But if you think about it, they actually asked for 3 in the first place and you deliver 4. It's already more than what they asked for, but because you have set up the bar to be 6, they're actually seeing that as a negative, even though you give them one more painting than the original asked for. So the rule here is like when the client's giving you job and stuff like that, just do whatever they ask for. If it's not, it has to be reasonable, of course. But if they're asking for, okay, can you do 3 paintings? And you, in the back of your head, like, okay, 3 paintings, not a problem at all. You don't tell them, oh no, that's too easy, I could do 6. Just go, okay, 3. And anything you do is extra, right? And if you're tired that week, you don't want to overdo it, then just do 3. You take it an easy week, but you're not doing anything wrong. They're getting 3 paintings. That's what they asked for in the first place. Everything's totally fine. So if you're gonna over deliver, keep it quiet to yourself. Deliver it. Don't tell them ahead of time. Okay, so you're gonna set you up for high expectations. All right, number 3, strong studio vision. Quite important, especially in the beginning parts of your company, which is, especially when you're growing the studio, you want to have a certain vision or certain kind of design jobs your studio like to do. Because when studios are working with studios, they tend to think, oh, that studio is really good at that, this studio is really good at this studio is quite good at that. If you could branch yourself like that, you start to pick up clients to specifically go to you for what your studio aims to do. Instead of, because a job pays well, you're like, but it doesn't do anything for the bigger picture of your studio, sometimes we actually give those jobs up. For example, for my studio, we tend to take on sci-fi, mechanical, and environmental designs. That's kind of our specialty. So if a project comes along, say it's a bubblegum commercial or something like that, I keep using bubblegum for some reason. Okay, imagine it's a bubblegum commercial, pays extremely well, it's got a really healthy budget and timeline and so forth and stuff like that. But whatever we draw for this project does absolutely nothing for our company portfolio. It's something that we probably don't even want to put on our website. These are jobs in which we look at it and go, you know what, we're going to reject this job. We're going to, tell the clients, thanks, but we can't do it. Please, look for someone else to do it. It's because the time we spend there, even though we'll make money in the short run, the benefits to the studio as a global piece is not that good. Versus we could even take a job, say from an indie studio, the pay might be completely crap, and the time is completely rushed, but the project is very, very helpful. Say it's designing alien planets or designing ancient cultural with a sci-fi spin. Okay, the budgeting's not great, who cares? We'll take a hit for the meantime. But these pieces we'll do is going to greatly benefit my studio in terms from a marketing point of view. These are going to go on the website eventually. They're going to be marketed to other clients. When they see it, they go, oh, this studio is really good at doing this or very good at doing that, and that's going to grow your studio in the long term. Okay, so have a strong vision and stick with that versus just taking any job you possibly can. Now, of course, I don't want to base a rule, right? Don't starve yourself like rejecting everything because you have a vision, but this is just a general rule of like, what do you want your studio to do? What is your thing that you want? What when DreamWorks comes to you, or what Electronic Arts or Ubisoft, they see you doing something very, very good, and what is that you want to do? Okay, next is hire a producer or a CFO, because artists, we suck with time and we suck with money. Okay, because artists, we like what we do. That's why we do what we do. We like to draw and we like to be in that world. But when you're running a freelance company, you are also a business. So to have an artist, right, let's do a couple of key points here. By having a producer, one, they're very good at managing your time. They'll tell you, hey, this is due on this day and you better get it done. As an artist, you could procrastinate, lose track of schedules. A producer will keep you in line. Two, having a producer or a CFO, they can help manage your cash flow. Artists are really bad with money. Suddenly you get a big check from Ubisoft or something. Hey, man, I got tons of money. Let's go buy something, useless. A producer would tell you, hey, that's we gotta put 80% of that into our company, and you can spend 20% of it or something like that. They're gonna help you save cash, and cash is gonna help your company grow, right? So they're gonna manage everything, and if you hire other freelancers, they can help negotiate all that type of contracts and stuff. And number three, which is the most important, if you're the creative in a studio, right, your job is to deliver the design stuff. That's what you're good at. Now imagine there's 2 studios, and one, just yourself, you're doing everything. That means you have to be on the phone, you have to do invoicing, you have to do Excel sheets, you have to be on phone calls, you have to be talking to the producers. You're now eating up maybe 30-40% of your time on things that are not creative related. Meanwhile, there's another studio that has a producer. They send their producer out to handle all those busy work and making invoices and follow up with clients. Meanwhile, the creative is doing what they're good at 100% of the time. That studio will have a huge advantage over yours, or the guy who doesn't have the producer, because they can outproduce you. They can outproduce the work, right? And the work might be better. That 40% of the time that you're wasting doing invoices, they could be using to do design research, design thinking, doing better design solutions. So ultimately, that studio might have a huge advantage over you. So even though a producer or CFO costs money, you have to pay them, salaries and things like that, but they're well worth the investment for your company to grow, right? And one more point to that is that producers like to deal with producers. When a studio calls you up, generally it's a producer who's calling you up to get to secure the contracts, and they speak more business-like. Yeah. So when you talk about the artist, one, you speak different languages. You're all about art and design. They could care less about that. They're caring about budget, timeline, the kind of things, the deliverables and stuff like that. It's a different world, right? They're talking business. So you can send a producer to shield you from that. A producer will know how to handle these situations to benefit both parties. As an artist, you could actually, if you're not experienced in that world, you could even be taken advantage of. They'd be like, man, this project is awesome. It's really cool. It's going to be good for your portfolio. And artists sometimes will cave to that. Myself, I'll totally cave. If the project is something really, really cool, I'll be like, dude, I'll do it for free. You know what I'm saying? And then you're like on a project really cool, and you're like, oh man, I now got to eat a couple noodles for freaking the next 10 months or something like that. So a producer will make sure they protect you from a business side and give you all the time and creativity, which is you're good at. Okay, let's go number 5, which is have a 5-year plan. This is related to your strong studio vision, which is take on jobs and then plan your studio according to where do you want to be in 5 years. Do you want to have three more artists on board? Do you want to have a 3D modeler with you? Do you want to have a animatics guy with you? Do you want to have a video editor with you? These are things that you work with your producer and tell them, hey, my 5-year plan is to grow my studio into this vision. And their job is to make sure that you save the kind of money that's coming in, the kind of earnings and structure your studio that way. So as soon as you have a cash flow, you hire that artist in. You put that artist in a job. When you have more cash, you get your editors in. So that way you have a plan versus every day is just what's next. Let's take a job, finish a job. Oh man, what's coming in? Let's go on the internet, look for more jobs. If that comes in, take that job. And I really have no vision. And you're just going day by day, surviving purely as a freelancer versus as a company, right? Grow towards that. You don't need to buy that shiny new sports car yet. Invest that money into studio growth, and that ultimately will give you a lot more in return than a sports car will, in the short term. Okay, number 6, solve clients' problems, don't create more. Studios love you guys to solve problems. When a big studio is making a video game, they have hundreds of stuff they have to deal with. Concept art is just one. Okay, we are not the only thing they worry about. They have sound, music, VFX, animation, motion capture, voice actors, tons of stuff they have to handle. So if you're a studio, you come along, right? For example, let's go back to number 1. You register a company and you're called, what do you call it? The Hyperion Studio or something like that. Say that's what you're called. You come to them and go, we'll solve all your concept problems, right? You give us all your needs. Come into our studio, we'll spit back a ton of cool concept art. Everything's art directed ready. All the designs are done for you. You don't have to do anything. Big studios love that kind of stuff because you have removed one of their headaches, right? Like they're watching 100 different headaches being made all at the same time. If you could come along and solve a few of them, that's perfect. You don't want to be the opposite, which is when you get these jobs, you ask questions, you're always nagging them, you're actually creating more problems for themselves. They're not going to use you for long because you're not solving anything with them. You're just creating more problems. So they want a studio, the more you can handle, the more you can solve, the easier it is for your studio to be very, very stable. Because these big companies are actually, especially the bigger ones, they'll stick with you for years if they see you as a problem solver. They're like, every time a game gets made, they'll call you up. You have these clients for years and years and years. All right. Next one, use positive marketing. Very important. This business is very, very small. Sometimes even we do this as well. As a company, we'll ask a freelancer, what do you think of this studio? What do you think of so-so? Someone who doesn't use positive marketing could possibly say like, that studio sucks, man. They're not good. Don't use them. They're not. The thing is, by saying that, you have no idea if the client actually already has a very positive working relationship with that studio. For example, you're like, oh man, X studio, blah blah blah. They suck, man. Don't use them. Use us. We're much better than them. They might be using that studio for 5 years and have a beautiful working relationship, have no problem whatsoever. Now they're gonna see you as the problem solver. They're like, wait a second. We had no problem with this studio. You're talking crap about that studio. Maybe you're the one with the problem, right? So for us, it's always been positive. So the client asks you, hey, what do you think of so-and-so studio? We're like, they're great. They do really good work, right? And even if you have a problem with them, that's not your right to project that to your client. We just say, look, you can make your own choice. That studio is great. We do our thing, they do their thing. Really, it's up to you. It's up to you to pick who we are. I think that comes down to decisions not within our hands. So maybe try us both. Give us a chance to do some stuff on your project. Maybe give them a chance to do some project. Let's see if we can work together. Maybe even so. Positive marketing will totally help you, because if you're good, if you're confident, you don't need to trash talk anybody that's out there. There's so much work out there for video games. I mean, seriously, there's so much freelance work out there that if you're just good, there's plenty of work for everybody. You don't need to bite somebody else's head off to get these jobs, right? So for us, always just be like, just put the work out there and just stay quiet and stay positive. No need to talk crap. And also, this industry is small. You might be working with some of these guys later. You know what I'm saying? You might be forming a studio with them. You might merge together. So let's just be buddies with everybody. All right, and number 8, most important, work with people and clients you like. Okay, so don't chase the money. Okay, chase the jobs and chase the overall bigger picture. If you're finding a client, maybe the project is not so big. Maybe it's not a AAA. Maybe the pay is not humongous, but you enjoy working on it. For me, after 20 years of doing this, that is so much more fun than a project in which the clients are not fun to work with, or maybe the team you're with is not so good, but maybe the pay is really good. It's not worth it. I mean, I've worked on projects that pay extremely well, but after like 2-3 months, you're like, you know what, this is not fun at all, because we're all humans at the end of the day. We have to enjoy what we do. Money can only take you so far on that enjoyment. But if you're going to work every day and you're on a project you absolutely do not like, you have to walk away from that kind of stuff. Instead, sometimes right now, like for example, we work on some small games. Doesn't matter. The team is awesome. The clients are awesome. Like for example, I worked on the Ninja Turtle film from a few years back. Not the Michael Bay version, but the animated version. The director's name was Chris. Oh man, he was so fun to work with, right? We know the film is a little small. It's produced by Imaji, I think a Hong Kong company or something like that, right? It's a smaller film, but the team was awesome. The art director was awesome. The production designer was really fun. It's a small little team. I had a great time working on it. So it wasn't like, oh, let's go for a AAA film, we're going to reject this kind of smaller budget film. It's like, I loved everyone working on it, and the experience is worth so much more than whatever they paid us to do, So these are things I advise you to do. And also hire people that you like to work with. As soon as you get an awkward feeling about someone where you don't get along, it's better to cut that business relationship off than to keep it around and have your company go down a little sinkhole. Yeah. So work with guys you trust, work with people you like, work with clients you trust, and clients you like. So hopefully that helps you guys who are starting freelancers. All right. So this episode went a little long. We're, hour and 20 minutes. Hopefully it didn't put you guys to sleep. Anyway, so we are back, hopefully with Design Cinema, and we'll be continue doing a lot more episodes as the time goes forward. In the meantime, if you guys have questions and all this kind of stuff, just write below in the comment section. Another thing we're going to try to do is most likely a Design Cinema website will be coming up pretty soon, and so that way we could put all the videos in one place, and also whoever has questions, maybe we even have some activities and these type of things. These are all the things we're currently building up for Design Cinema. And of course, everything's going to be free. Don't worry, there's never going to be some kind of charge or membership, all that. I do this stuff because it's really fun. I'm not doing this for any kind of reason other than it's fun, okay? And it was great meeting a lot of you guys at GDC who watch Design Cinema, and to meet you guys in person and shake your hand. It's a privilege to meet you guys, and I'm really happy that some of you guys have had your life change because of what we do with Design Cinema. And yeah, so we'll continue doing that. So thank you so much, and sorry again for the delay, and we'll see you guys in episode 80, something with painting or drawing. Okay, all right, thanks. Until then, bye bye.